Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to all of you here in the room and all of you joining us now online. And welcome to, I can't believe this is the 7th of our cryptographic module events that we at BSI have held over the last few years. Looking through the registration list, I can see that there are some that have been with us all the way through from the very first one we did at MWC 3.5 years ago, and there are some that are brand new. So thank you to the newcomers for joining us. My name is David Mudd. I'm the Global Head of Digital Trust Assurance at BSI, which means under my remit comes cybersecurity, privacy, data protection, digital supply chain, and AI. So from my perspective, I get all the fun stuff to play with. And cryptographic modules and cryptographic module security has been a key theme for us at BSI for a few years. So today, once I've stopped talking, I'm going to hand over to some of our keynote speakers. We've got a great lineup today, Antonio from DECRA, and then we're going to hand over to Daryl from Setsko, and then yes, unfortunately, he's back to listening to me again for a bit, and then very pleased to welcome as well Shafi from Cybersecurity Malaysia, talking about his experience with ISO 19790. And then we're going to have a panel discussion. I'm then going to kind of round up with looking at next steps and then a summary. And we should get this done in just over 2 hours or so, I think. So, well, here we are again. And today is going to be a mixture of a little bit of recapping on some of the key themes. And then, as you can see from some of the speakers, very, very pleased to have a mixture of both a global perspective and also the perspective right here in ASEAN as well. In particular, a mixture then of government perspective and local commercial testing perspectives as well. But I just want to recap a bit. I've realized for the last few sessions, we dive straight into the heart of the topic and really to reflect on why is BSI talking about this? Who are we and what is our right to be here and to speak? So BSI, we are a purpose-driven organization. We are independent from government and independent from any shareholders, but with a mandate to work for the public good. So our role is to support industry in advancing technology for a better society. We are truly a global brand. We might have British in the name, but most of our clients and indeed our own people are outside of the UK with a fantastic team right here in Singapore. And then what is it we actually do? Well, standards being in the name, we're named mostly really for known around developing, shaping best practice in the form of British and international standards. We were a founding member of ISO. But we also provide assurance services, training, assessment and certification, regulatory services, we're a notified body for medical devices and soon to be a notified body under the EU AI Act for artificial intelligence as well. And then also consulting. So besides helping shape and create that best practice, we're very much at the sharp end of implementing it as well. And then, in particular, we focus on two main themes. I was saying that we're purpose-driven, and the single biggest challenge we all face on this planet is sustainability. And the single biggest route forward for achieving a better society that is still sustainable is through the effective, trusted, responsible use of digital technologies. So that digital trust and sustainability are the two key themes. And when it comes to trusting technology, we'll only trust technology provided we can trust the security. And this is why we see cryptographic modules and a global pragmatic approach to getting this important technology out to the market quickly and effectively and updated quickly and effectively is so, so important. So that's the reason why we're here today and we've been running these events for the last few years. So back to today's event. So we're now going to go into some keynote talks, and we're going to start off, if I could ask Antonio from DECRA to come and join us, and going to talk through, again, looking at what goes behind that cryptographic module test and why this can become a basis for an international common one test, one standard approach. So Antonio, if you wouldn't mind joining us. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining this really interesting event organized by BSI. Thank you so much, David, for the introduction. And well, as you can see, we are trying to answer this question of one test for crypto modules, and the answer is clear from the first slide of the presentation. This one test approach is based on a standard called ISO 19790. This is I will say the worldwide de facto standard for testing evaluation of cryptographic modules. Okay. So, well, my name is Antonio Vizcaino. I've been working for DECRA for more than 20 years now. And it was recently that I joined the cybersecurity team. I'm part of the business development and strategy team, working together with a real amazing team of technical people, commercial people, etc., etc. And we are here to support the full ecosystem to address testing, evaluation, certification needs regarding cybersecurity in different verticals such as automotive, medical, industrial, ICT, etc., etc. Okay. So here you have my contact details. You now know how to find me. Okay, let's have a quick look into the topics that I would like to review in this presentation. First, what is a crypto module? So this is important, of course. Then a quick overview on the testing certification process, an overview of the standards that are applicable in this case. And then finally, if we have time only, some notes on how DECRA can help manufacturers, developers with their crypto modules testing and certification needs. Okay. So first, what's a crypto module? I mean, this is the definition that we can find in ISO 19790. It's like a circular definition, I would say. So it's a set of hardware, software, firmware that implements security functions in the boundary of the solution. I mean, it's like a self-explaining definition. I prefer another one. I mean, at the end, a crypto module is a product that processes data and applies a cryptographic algorithm to data that crosses or stays in the product that we are considering. Okay. As you can see here, there are many types of cryptographic modules. They can be hardware, software. They can be hybrid, a combination of hardware and software. Can be components of other systems, or can be considered, I mean, the boundary of the cryptographic module can be the full system itself. As you can see here, can be I would say a smartphone, for instance, can be an operating system and a storage product. I mean, in principle, provided that it applies a cryptographic algorithm to information that is going through or it's stored, in principle falls in the definition of a crypto module. Okay, so if we talk about the certification testing process, it's important to know that we have different roles. Okay, for sure, we have the role of the vendor. We have the role of the consultant. That it's not mandatory, as you can imagine, but in some cases it can help to make the process smoother, so to speak. We have the lab, of course. The laboratory is the one that evaluates the product developed by the vendor. We have the algorithms that are validated during this testing process, and then at the end we have the certification body. The certification body is the one that puts a stamp saying that this report, this testing that has been performed by the laboratory has some kind of validity, okay, to give confidence to the end user, who is the one that is consuming these certificates and consuming the the crypto module, of course. Okay. In terms of timing, this I'm just showing here the typical process for a certification process end to end, starting with the initial conversations between laboratory and the vendor, then testing. You can see that there is I would say a huge difference between 1 to 6 months. At the end, it depends on the type of crypto module we are considering, depends on the security level that we are considering. But well, we normally in average we can say that crypto module evaluation should take normally between 3 to 4 months in average. Then we have, depending on the certification process we are talking about, we have different additional I would say stages that whose duration depend on the certification scheme that we are considering. But well, at the end, yeah, the idea is to have this certificate as a result, as an outcome of the this testing, this evaluation process. Okay. Well, I'm going to skip this because this is not so relevant. In the testing part, which is one of the most important, as you can imagine, the first stage, of course, is to provide the implementation under test, to have it deployed on laboratories site. It's also possible to have a remote testing if some basic measures are taken. So, well, this EUT phase means that the product is made available to the laboratory. Then we start with documentation review. This is an integral part of ISO 19790. In parallel, we proceed with testing that includes functional testing, entropy validation, physical testing, validation of the algorithms, source code review. Some of them may or may not apply depending on the security level that we are considering. But well, at the end, this when all of this is finished, then we have completed the first loop of evaluation. If any deviations have been found, then some time is allocated for the vendor to fix any potential deviations, and then additional testing is performed. Then the laboratory will produce the report, and this report will be at the end be submitted to the certification body or certification bodies, as we will see a little bit later. Regarding validation of the algorithms, this is an integral part of the evaluation, a very important one, and this at the end it's a back and forth process. Okay, at the very beginning, the manufacturer defines what are the algorithms supported by the product. Then the laboratory will generate some, I would say, test vectors, so that the vendor can generate the outputs for these input vectors, and in the last, I would say, step, the laboratory will compare these outputs with the expected outputs. If everything goes okay, then the algorithms are considered to be validated. You may say, okay, will it be enough for a crypto module to comply with the algorithms to consider that the module is okay? As I said before, it's a very important part, but it's not enough. It's not enough because at the end, the crypto module is operating in the real world with interfaces with other components in the system, etc., and it's not enough to prove that the output of the algorithms is as expected. There are many other considerations, like the ones that we are going to see a little bit later. Okay. Well, at the end, what what needs to be provided to the certification body will be the detailed test report of the results of the evaluation according to the type of product we are considering, and also the security level that we have evaluated. Also security policy, results for physical security testing. This depends. This is something we are also going to see. It depends on the level that we are considering, the version of the standard that we are considering, and also finally reports for entropy evaluation, if applicable. Of course, also depending on the type of module that we are considering. Then, with all this full package, this is delivered to the certification body that reviews and provides the certificate. Everything goes okay, but I'm pretty sure that David will elaborate more on this a little bit later. Okay, now requirement for vendors. It's true that this evaluation phase is the most relevant part together with the certification, but it's this I would say preparatory phase is also very important. Okay, and it's very important to do it properly. First, we need to set the target. We need to set the requirements to determine first which is the security level that the vendor wants to achieve. And here the vendor has to consider two aspects. One is what they want to achieve, because their customers may be asking for one particular level, but they also have to be realistic. Some cases with the current implementation of the product, it's not possible to achieve the level that they have in mind. So in those cases, it's maybe better to start with a lower level, have the product certified, and then when the time comes, I would say upgrade the level to a higher one once the product is really ready to achieve this. Okay. Then, well, second is module type, hardware, software, or hybrid, as I mentioned before. Important topic is how to define the boundary of this cryptographic module, and then put everything in context. How to deal with the new releases of the product. What are, as I said before, the expectations from the end customers, and also to be realistic. Okay, if you need the certificate in 3 months, you shouldn't go for a SL4. Then maybe you can start with a lower level and then I mean, there are many considerations to take into account. In this slide, I'm also showing the intake form that we are sharing in DECRA with our customer, with the minimum information that we need to know more about the cryptographic module and be able to determine the efforts, the scope of testing, so that we are in the same page and we have a clear understanding on what needs to be done. More documentation, security policy, finite state model, entropy analysis, some additional information on vendor evidence for to deal with the requirements in the standard. It's true that all this documentation can be. It's not mandatory that the vendor itself generates it. They can use a consultant, as we saw before, in case the vendor doesn't have the required expertise, or that they don't have the bandwidth for that. But this is very important. I mean, it's not just a matter of actually testing or evaluating the product itself, but also to have the right documentation to support the evaluation that will be done by the laboratory. Okay. And well, I have already mentioned the algorithms, the functional testing, physical testing, entropy testing, depending on the type of module that we are considering. Now, the standards. The standards, as I said before, the de facto standard is ISO 19790 with the companion 24759, which includes the methodology for testing, and this is what is provided by ISO. Okay, so this is the baseline, but it doesn't mean that it's the only documentation that we will be using for testing. We also have guidelines provided by the certification body, if applicable. we have specific guidelines or rules for algorithms validation, for entropy analysis, for non-invasive invasive attacks. Okay, so recently in the new version of ISO 19790, as we will see later, there are specific requirements for non-invasive attacks starting from security level 3. So this is something that we start to consider from now, from today. Okay, so again, these standards, the family of standards or standard related with ISO 19790 are provided by ISO. IEC. This is here you can see the general structure of this standard with the different annexes that include documentation requirements, module security development, approved non-invasive attack mitigation test metrics. This is the one that has been recently modified or upgraded in the latest version of the standard. We will see this before. And well, as you can see here, the different levels and the 11 different areas that are part of the evaluation of a crypto model. Okay. Here again, this is another way to show the the structure of the standard and the related standards, as I mentioned before. But the key takeout from this slide is a different one. The point is that even if you are using this one standard, ISO 19790, as a reference or as a reference standard for crypto module evaluation, it's possible that some parts are complemented or superseded by guidelines or publications issued by national authorities or certification bodies. You can see some examples here, technical instructions from the CCN for the Spanish regime, BSI group certification regime for crypto module certification, certification guidelines coming from Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, any other countries, publications from the German regime, and also publications and implementation guidelines from NIST, from the North American regime. Okay, so these certification regimes can provide additional guidelines or additional requirements that are built on top of ISO 19790 and depending on the case will be used for the subsequent certification process. Okay. So, I mean, as you can imagine, ISO 19790 is not a static thing. It's evolving with time. As you can see here, the latest version, 2024, is likely to be published. I mean, for sure will be published before the end of the year. And what we need to see is how different certification bodies will adopt this new version of the standard. Okay. It's also important to mention that from these security levels that we have seen before, from level 1 to level 4, it's important that you cannot choose. You cannot say, okay, for this particular feature, my module supports level 3, and for this other feature, my module supports level 1. You have to I would say do your math, do your calculation, and the level that your module can achieve is the lower that it's supported by any of its components or for each of the 11 controls that I mentioned before. You can see one example here. Even if for instance, for role services and authentication, maybe this particular module could achieve level 2, but as you can see, for the rest of requirements, it can only achieve level 1. So for the overall module, it's level 1. What is possible? And well, this is taken from the standard, as you can see, and here you can see how the complexity changes depending on the security level that we are considering for the different security controls that we have mentioned. For crypto module specification, module interfaces, role services, authentication. The higher the security level, the the more complex the evaluation is, the longer it takes, and also the requirements on the vendor side increases. Okay. So I'm going to skip this very quickly. I mean, you will have access to the slides. So, and there are also a number of definitions to be taken into account: approved mode of operation, approved service, security function, sensitive security parameter, critical security parameter. I mean, you have the definitions here. This is these are the type of things that make this evaluation more complex that you could think from the beginning, and why it's not enough to evaluate or to make sure that the algorithms are properly implemented. At the end, the implementation is based on these parameters, services, etc., and they have to be designed properly with the proper architecture, so that the crypto module has everything has a context, an environment that makes it secure and usable by I would say the system where it is deployed, so to speak. Okay, and here we have some insights on what's new in this new version of the standard, the one that will be published hopefully during October 2024. And here you have the most relevant changes, improvements in the degraded mode and error state, introduction of secure containers, etc., etc. I will not go one by one because otherwise it will take the afternoon. It's important to note that in principle all of them are backward compatible with the previous version, except the zeroization requirements for plain text keys. So this is something that in some cases, in order when a certification body adopts this new version of the standards, existing modules may need a delta and adaptation process to comply with this standard, because again this new requirement was not previously, and it's not backward compatible. So for those crypto modules that already implemented this because it was a decision of the manufacturer, they have this is good news for them. And also, as you can see there in Annex F, for the first time, the standard is including a reference to this ISO standard for non-invasive mitigation test methods. So this is something that, again, we need to see how the certification bodies decide to not to implement, but to add to their existing requirements for certification. So this is at the moment a question mark, so to speak. And then, well, quick summary about the certification process. Again, David will probably elaborate on this a little bit more. But well, here we are starting with the crypto module. We have testing that is based again on ISO 19790, 24759. And then we have these specific certification body requirements that I mentioned before. These CB requirements may include a specific compliance with or a specific support with algorithms that are identified or that are requested by this particular certification body, or any other side or additional requirements that we can consider. At the end, with everything put together, the laboratory will issue the test report, and this test report can be in principle used by one or multiple certification bodies to issue one or multiple certificates. Certification bodies can be national regimes, private regimes, CABs. I mean, there is I would say a variety, a multiplicity of options that we have here. We have mentioned some of them in a previous slide. But the key takeout here is that by using the right approach, using ISO 19790 as a reference standard, using the right laboratory that has the required accreditations and authorizations from the different certification bodies, then it's possible to test once and reuse multiple times and comply with requirements in principle on a global scale. And well, from DECRA side, what can I say? I mean, we are ISO 17025 accredited by the Spanish accreditation body. We're in process of becoming 17065 accredited as well. We have experience with any type of a module that you can imagine, and it's also worth to mention that we are also authorized by NIST. So for us, it's very easy to convert or to use the same effort, or to leverage the same effort that we are doing for NIST to issue or to get an ISO 19790 certificate from BSI, for instance, and the other way around. Okay, because this is the one important benefit of crypto evaluation and certification. You can test first and then apply to a multiplicity of certification regimes without the need, in principle, to retest or to do it everything from the scratch. Just adding these particular individual requirements from each certification panel. And well, that's pretty much it. I don't know if there are any questions from the audience regarding the test portion of this presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Antonio. If there are any questions in the room, please do raise your hand. I think we do have some questions online. Anyways, just one. Do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Antonio, for that. We have one question online. I know you put out the slides of what some of the differences are between the different levels of this, but what are the key differences that you can outline if you would like to answer, or maybe Mr. David?
Thanks. So just to summarize, just the key differences between the four levels. Obviously, here we're talking about from the test perspective, but it'd be useful just to understand the context of where, the difference in relevance between, say, a level 1 and a level 4 as well, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it also depends not only on the security level that we are considering, but also the type of crypto module that we are evaluating. For instance, if it's a hardware module, then I would say physical tests are required from security level 3. For hardware or hybrid crypto modules, it's also mandatory to perform entropy evaluation of the entropy source. This is something that at the moment is not required for software modules, but this is expected to change as well in the near future. Okay, and at the end, I will say that the difference is not in the features or I would say the security controls that each security module has to comply, but the internal complexity of the different levels. Okay, so I mean this is basically it.
Thanks. And what do you see as being the most common level that most manufacturers for a relatively standard cryptographic module?
I would say that at least from our perspective, and also based on statistics that are provided in crypto module meetings, for instance, the ICMC or the CMFAU, it will be I would say practically a tie between SL2 and SL3. Okay, right. SL4 is not that requested because the requirements are really tough, and actually the differences between SL1 and SL2 are not that critical. So most
right. So the main battleground is between level 2 and level 3. That's the main area of contest.
To be completely honest, this is a context, but it's not to say that okay, let's do SL3 because I don't know, for any reason. You have to be prepared to comply with SL3. The requirements, especially for our modules, are much higher. You have to be prepared almost to duplicate cost, to duplicate lead time. So it's not an easy decision. But well, this is.
And is that largely driven by the end user specifying level 3? Would most manufacturers who obviously prefer to just go for level 2? I presume you could try to differentiate by saying, well, we're level 3. But it's a big investment without a direct customer requesting it.
That's correct. At the end, requirements come from the end customers, and in a tender, if they say, okay, we need crypto module supporting SL3, then for some vendors, this means, okay, we will adapt quickly, or we will maybe plan this for a second round, or okay, we are ready for that, and let's go. I mean, we had real examples of this customers that were that contracted SL2 with us, and on the last minute they said, no, we need SL3. Okay, but this is the
timeline. Timeline goes out like this, cost goes up like that.
That's correct. Yeah. And but well, the vendors are aware of this situation. Sure. So
thanks, and we'll come back to that security level issue as part of the main panel discussion as well, because it's an important one when we consider our goal of having a common overall approach. So thank you once again, Antonio. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I did forget to say, but hopefully I think Mona's now put a message out to everyone online. So please do keep your questions coming in throughout both the key talks and again in the panel discussion as well. So thanks again, Antonio. I know we've touched on this before, again, describing what the process is, but I think Antonio particularly well has kind of summarized it in a much more easily digestible approach and presentation than maybe it's been presented before. So really brought some clarity there. Thank you very much. I'm now going to go on to our second speaker, and we're now going to, after talking about this is the standard, this is the best practice, this is the way we should all be doing it. I'm now going to ask Daryl from Setsco to come up here, and he's going to really pose a bit of a challenge, I think, back to the industry here on what we could, and to the governments as well, on what we could be doing more to really make the most of this very well structured, very well crafted global international best practice. So Daryl, if you wouldn't mind taking the floor. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Daryl Koh. I'm from Setsco Services Private Limited. So before I start the slide, maybe a bit introduction about myself. So I have been in the formal assurance testing business for 20 years. So my main, I have been building a lot of labs in ASEAN, and then building for common criteria lab and so forth. So so I want to thank BSI UK and David for giving me an opportunity to talk about ISO 19790, which is something that Setsco is planning to build, go into this area. So a bit about Setsco. So I think Setsco, many of you might not have heard about Setsco, but Setsco has over 40 years of history. We are one of the biggest testing, inspection, and certification companies in Singapore. This at a glance, you can see that we have over 700 employees in 10 industries, and then we are accredited in 19 fields of accreditation. So these are some of the key industry that we serve. And lastly, for us is we are a subsidiary under Setsco, and we are providing the following services: common criteria, cybersecurity labeling scheme for under the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. We're doing SCARS testing for 5G. We're doing VAPT and consultancy and so forth. So my talk today is just to give you an insight about the adoption of ISO 19790 in APAC. One reason why we look into this is because we are seriously considering going into this standard, And after hearing Antonio, his comprehensive explanation about the requirements, the process, 19790 is something that is very comprehensive and it will definitely help in providing assurance for cryptographic modules. That's very important. So unfortunately, when we do our study, we find that there are not many adoption of ISO 19790. So what we can see that in APAC, we have Japan and Korea, who are one of the early adopters of ISO 19790 since 2005, 2006, which coincides with the first version of ISO 19790. Okay, and it is a national scheme. It's more towards testing some of their national requirements. They adopt ISO 19790, and then the labs are also either government linked or and so forth. Then in 2021, Cybersecurity Malaysia also set up their ISO 19790 scheme. Later, for these more details, I will later for Shaifi from Cybersecurity Malaysia to give you more details. And then in Indonesia, under BSSN, in 2015, they also adopted ISO 19790. It's still in the infancy stage. They are doing some trials, but not much coming from there at the moment. You can see that since we're having this event in Singapore, about CSA, about Singapore, whether they recognize ISO 19790. We do not have a formal 19790 scheme that is following the ISO process. There are some cryptographic testing, but it's more ad hoc than ISO standard. But we do recognize this 19790 here in Singapore. Okay, so in a way, things that you need to get out from this is, for APAC, mostly the adoption rate is very low. It's mostly government adoption. And also from when we do our studies in the outside of government, not much people know about 19790, unfortunately. It's mostly governmental bodies that know about this. In the private sector, people are still not that clueful about this ISO standard, unfortunately. So I think, so what can we do to address this issue? The thing is that personally for me, 19790 is really a very detailed standard to provide assurance. So that's why, because we are also planning to go into this service, and we are thinking of ways how we can promote the adoption of 19790. So one of the things is we see that there's a governmental body and the private certification body. Maybe there's some cross recognition of results. So if you do one under, like for example, we do ISO 19790 level 2 under Cybersecurity Malaysia. Maybe on the private certification body, they can recognize the result. I know that assurance is different from different parties, but maybe you can accept, but then do a bit of verification so that you will help vendors to save some cost and faster to make the process faster. The other part is because I come from a CC background, so maybe there's also cross recognition of evaluation result between ISO 19790 and also maybe common criteria or other international standards. There's a lot of similarities between the requirements for ISO 19790 and CC. For example, in terms of life cycle requirements, in terms of design requirements, the things that ISO 19790 look out for primarily can be also found in common criteria. So if your product that you send for common criteria, for example, has a cryptographic module that has been certified to ISO 19790, is there a way for us to trust the results and then to make the CC evaluation shorter and faster and potentially cheaper? The last point that maybe you all can think about as well is the things like one of the main thing that I mentioned is assurance is different between regions, between different certification body, between governments. Maybe there should be a discussion, a working group between all parties to ensure consistent standards in implementation of the standard of this ISO 19790. the way how certain things are tested, the requirements, more detail might be shared between the different certification body, so that when if I send to one scheme to evaluate, the other scheme can trust and recognize the result from there. So mine is a very short slides, but I just want you all to think what are the things that we can do to make the ISO 19790 widely adopted. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Do we have any questions in the room or online? I've got a load of questions I'm going to have, but I'm going to save that probably for the panel discussion because that really sets us up well. So thanks once again, Daryl. And I think there's some challenges there that we've maybe touched upon a few times previously, but I think as you'll hear, once I've finished talking and I'll hand over to someone else, you'll hear from Cybersecurity Malaysia. And I do think there is a stronger desire and will now to collaborate more and find a way forward. Thanks, Daryl, kind of setting the scene here now. Now, yes, it's back to me again. And I'm going to be talking through the certification scheme. Now, Antonio, you said, oh, David's going to be covering that. I'll be honest with you, I've covered this. I talk about it every single time. So I'm not going to go through an in-depth, here's every aspect of the scheme again, but just for those who are maybe not so familiar with BSI, just a very short overview of the scheme. But then I'm really going to focus on some of the advantages of this approach and also touch upon something that Antonio mentioned as well, really, really important when you're looking at the boundaries of your certification and the impact of that as well. So just want to clarify again the whole point of testing versus certification. So, testing is the activity that goes on in the lab. The output then is a detailed test report that is a moment in time against a certain version of a product. Now, certification then is the higher level formal attestation of compliance, of conformity with the standard. It doesn't have to list all the detailed test results, so it's something that can be much more easily shared and better understood, and it gives that additional layer, not just of trust, but also of impartiality. So that's the purpose of the certification. You think, well, if I've got a test report, why do I need certification as well? Like I said, that clear statement that can be shared and that additional layer of impartiality and trust. So when we're looking at the certificate, key points, again, as Antonio has mentioned, is that, I'll jump over this side, there we go. The basic things we need are the test report and the security policy. Yes, there may be other additional specific requirements potentially from a particular client, but those are the fundamentals we need it. The certificate itself is valid for 3 years. Now, it contains on the certificate then a description of the module, its name, its version number, the achieved security level, as I mentioned, 1 to 4, a list of the approved algorithms that are embedded. So the certificate then becomes a very, very useful document in order to exchange information with potential clients without having to give all the details that are there in the test report. So extremely valuable document in its own right. And then a key point here is that we've also got a relatively flexible process for updating. Because I said it's tied into that version, and there's no way that version is going to remain the same over 3 years. So having a flexible way that it can be updated and maintained is very, very important. And a key point with all of this I'm going to come on to is speed. I'll come on to why this is so important in a little while. So when we're looking at the key advantages of 19790, number one is the actual contents of this standard. We've talked about, oh, it's good, this is a particular way of doing it. That's, it's the best. Yeah, absolutely. Why is that? Because over 100 countries agreed this represents international best practice. So if there's one reason above all that this should be the way forward, it's the fact that specialists and experts from all around the world have worked for years and are still working, as you've heard in the new version, to make sure this represents consensus accepted global best practice all around the world. The next point here is really the testing process. The way that the standard is written, it is written to force certain design considerations from the outset. So 19790 compliance, if you've not understood the standard and you just come along with a cryptographic module and said, I want to be tested and certified to 19790, it's not going to happen. You have to know the standard and understand it in advance. But what that does mean is when it comes to testing, the test routes and the test methods that Antonio was describing are relatively easy to be consistent in an accredited lab anywhere in the world. So the standard has been designed to be, I won't say difficult to implement, but the hard work is done by the security by design requirements. And therefore the testing, though it's complex enough, is nevertheless streamlined. In particular, the testing focuses on proving something is there rather than having to prove something doesn't exist. It's far easier to prove something is there and works than to prove a vulnerability isn't there. So that is why, again, this approach becomes relatively easy to streamline and to have trusted results from multiple labs providing they're accredited. So versus the more heuristic, opportunistic penetration test approach, which has its merits and has its values, we're focusing on proving something is the case rather than trying to prove something isn't there. And then finally, the fact that within this standard, we're not confusing the algorithm validation itself, we're just looking at has it been implemented effectively, means that you're also taking that layer of complexity out as well. So this approach makes it far, far easier to achieve the aim that we're going to be talking about in the panel discussion about having trust in mutual recognition and exchange of information of test data and test reports across schemes. And then the third point is around the speed to market. It can be, you saw Antonio's timeline up there, and yes, at one extreme, maybe it was a year, but for a relatively straightforward, lower security level product, it can take as little as 3 months from the start of the project through to testing and certification. And if you compare that to some of the other routes for this that can take 18 months or 2 years, this is far, far more straightforward. And when you think about the importance of maintaining the validity of that certificate, so it's one thing to say there's the product released, but if any change comes along, then until that change has been validated here, that certification is called into question. So the speed to market isn't just the initial push out there to get the product released, it's also on the route to actually validating any changes and making sure your certificate is maintained. And why is that? First of all, from what I've talked about around the test approaches. And the other second part here is that certification here is being done by a global certification body with, you saw us, we have 80,000 clients around the world. We are doing certificates all the time in high volume. So therefore, we have a very streamlined approach for actually delivering certification. So that speed to market is also a critical factor of why this has become such a good approach. Next thing I want to talk on briefly is around optimizing the scope of certification. So when you're setting that certification boundary, as we've heard already, the scope of a cryptographic module can be software, hardware, or firmware. And quite often it's embedded within a product. And as you heard from Antonio, the scope could be the whole product, it could be a board, or it could be the module. And it's down to the vendor to tell the certification body in the test lab what that scope of the product is. But the narrower you make that scope, the more reusable the certification is. And I'll just use this example of a router as one case. This actually was brought to life in the discussion we had in China, in Shanghai, and it was a very simple explanation that was given, so I thought I'd actually share that with you as well. So if the boundary is the whole product itself, the product is certified as one single entity, quite often the way with the common criteria approach as well. And from a government perspective, certainly in general, the end user perspective, that's all we really bothered about. So quite often it's from the end user, the client perspective to the manufacturer is, I just want that product certified. And so it's driven by the end user. There's a very, very clear certification path for that whole product. It's easily traceable. It's clearly understood. Quite often, the cryptographic module is very much integrated within that product. But that means all that hard work and that certification can only be used for that particular version of that product. not just it's that particular version. So therefore, it's quite straightforward for the end user and even for the manufacturer to win one particular contract, perhaps. But is this really the best way forward? Now you can take it down to the board level, particular electronics control board. And if this board is certified and the cryptographic element is embodied within that module, straight away you can see you've got another layer of flexibility here. You've got probably the most significant subsystem here, which can be used across the whole product range. So therefore, all products using that board can actually have applied that cryptographic module certification. But this is why, again, when we look at the module level, boundaries narrowed down to that cryptographic module, which could be complete software, or it could be a combination of hardware, firmware. But if it's purely down to that cryptographic module, you've got maximum reusability. Any product at all that wants to use that cryptographic module, you can apply that certification to. So this is why, again, thinking of a longer term strategy than just one particular contract and one product is another way to actually streamline and simplify the impact of certification. And the other reason why, once again, 19790 is what over 100 countries have agreed that represents best practice for cryptographic module security. So therefore, you're using that reference to associate with your product. So that's why, from my perspective, it all comes back to the standard, the way that the standard was made and who made that standard to give it the credibility as this is the route forward. So I'm going to keep this one quick now before we get on to, again, a very interesting new topic. So I'm just going to summarize very briefly here. So our scheme's up and running with that 3-year cycle with a flexible process for maintaining. And remember, this at the heart of this is global consensus best practice and that fastest route through for product certification. So if you just want to scan of that QR code, it'll take you to our website where you can find out more. So this is now, as I said, up and running, and it's great to be talking about that after, say, the last couple of years. We've been getting closer and closer. But I think what's really, really important now, and I know Daryl was saying, there's not much adoption of 19790 across APAC, but actually there are some strong pockets here where it's actually working. And this is the really exciting part that I want to come on to today. And I think then Daryl and what we're about to hear from Shafi will really set the scene for a very interesting panel discussion as well. So that's all from me, and I'm now going to hand straight over to Shafi from Cybersecurity Malaysia, who's going to talk about his experience of working with everything you've heard today for real. So Shafi, would you mind joining me up here? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me. Thank you, BSI, for inviting me. So I'm more on sharing of what my experience on the Malaysia overall picture. So basically, my name is Wan Shafiuddin. Call me Shafi because we have several staff with the name starting with one. And we just got a new CTO, Chief Technical Officer, also one, so several people, so just call me Shafi. And okay, we started on the crypto in 2013. Yeah. So we started developing a document in 2013. Then after that, got approved by government, Malaysia government, and then we come up with our strategic planning 2015, and we have to wait until 2016 because we don't have the budget. So I'm putting there Rancangan Malaysia ke-11, meaning that 5 years plan. In Malaysia, we have 5 years plan. So you put a national cryptographic policy and strategic plan for a proposal, and pass it to the government, and you get a 5 years budget. So definitely we start with 2016. Nothing happened from 2013 to 2016. It's just about meetings and meetings. Okay, so everything needs a budget. So we start 2016, and under the 2016 there is a lot of groups, what we call a strategic plan, and I'm one of the group 4. Later on I explain who are in the group, what is the group, and inside the 4 group, we have an evaluation facility and certification body, and it's completed in 2020. So this is the CB, certification body, which I'm leading with, and we have evaluation facility, government testing lab in cybersecurity. And moving forward, 2024, we are not talking about encryption, crypto. We have a more bombastic words, digital trust. And okay, what happened? Okay, this is what we have. That's why I'm saying that before do anything, we like to have a perfectionist. So instead of just doing the lab, start with the lab, start with the CB. We have all those 7 groups from researching, talent development, culture, awareness, establishing everything under the sun. Everything under the sun, but yet you don't have the money. And you have to wait until 2016. Okay, so, and in 2016, when we got the money, it's only cover PS4. Only one group, not the rest. So in the 5 years, 2016 until 2020, we developed the competency for the evaluation lab and also for the certification body. So what is inside the PS4? So basically, I'm just summarize a bit. So we have an implementation plan. How should you go for the cryptography product evaluation and certification? Then number 2, you have to establish the lab, of course, and the CB. Then Malaysia always like this. After everything that you done, what's the effectiveness? Show me the effectiveness. Do you have study on that? So that is what the approach for PS4. Then under PS4, this is the activity and program. So the first, you need to set a governance. So meaning that there must be a steering committee, working group, all those things. If there is a dispute between a government agency, so where do you refer to? All those is covered inside government management. Because we have a lot of agency, we have a lot of similar or redundant function between ministry. So this is must have. Then we have program 2, trusted cryptography product evaluation and certification. Then program 3, this is where we need to engage the vendors, developers, product owners, and bring them into the board and inside this program. And last but not least, 2013, we already talked about sustainability, but still it doesn't happen until today. And hopefully it happen in the future. Okay, so from there we start with, because you need to learn, there's a lot of competency issues. So a lot of analysts, we got a very good developer, but the developer has no experience in testing. No experience in testing. That is one of the hassle and obstacle and problem that we face in 2016. So what we have is you lie with the CMVP and FIPS 140-3. So that is what we start. That is where we started. So you can go to the United States. You travel for training, competency training. So you bring back and you train your colleagues. So we start with CMVP, and of course we do diligently until we get NV Labs accredited by the US. So this is one of our achievement. The first lab in Asian. I think the third one after Japan and Korea received such accreditation. Then we develop our own, because at that point of time, 1997 90 is published, 2016, 2017. So we do it because we want to have our national agenda. And of course, what Antonio has shown, you have to show your source code. So we want to protect them. Instead of reporting everything to US under the FIPS 140, we think that this is the time that we need to have our own, and ISO is already there, 19790. So let's develop another one. So now we run two schemes. One is the FIPS 140, where the labs in cybersecurity reported directly to US, nothing to do with me. They are not sending any report to me as a CB, but the second one, we call it Malaysia Cryptography Validation My CV. There, in this scheme, the lab reporting to me. The technical report will be sending to me, and we do the certification process. So basically, we have these two ISO to cover, 19790 and 24759, and it's still referring to our policy that we have developed in 2013, Dasar Cryptography Negara. And as mentioned by my colleague, two colleagues just now, there is two types of evaluation, CAV and CMV. So one is the algorithm and one is the module. I skip this. So this is the simple process that I can share with everybody. If you like, I can also share the slide. So we have three phases: initialize, oversight, and certify. And at the top, we have Malaysia Cryptography Validation Certification Body. So in my team, we have at least scheme evaluator, certifier, and quality manager. Then inside the lab, or we call it a SEF, Security Evaluation Facility at the bottom, at least they need to have senior evaluator, lab manager, and quality manager. So if you are thinking of starting a lab, so this is at least the job that is open, and it can also share by one person. Yeah, it depends on the workload. And this is a simple explanation where over the three phases, initialize, oversight, and certify. So basically, we will accept the application, then conduct oversight on testing and validation. So at this point of time, the staff under me, not necessarily to be technical, because we just oversight, and a lot of things refer to the evaluator, the lab. So before coming here, I want to put a disclaimer that don't ask technical thing to me. But since I have Antonio, if you ask a technical thing, then please help. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so that is pretty much. So the not so good news that I would like to share when Antonio and also David mentioned that the duration is about 1 year. So at this point of time, only one product is certified under us. Yeah, and when we want to start with the second product, I have a lot of question in my mind. Can we do it faster? What is the minimum? Can we do it differently? And as a CB, I work alone in silo. I don't have friends to talk to. Thank you for inviting. So at least I have David to talk after this, and perhaps BSI and Cybersecurity Malaysia can discuss. We also have DECRA and SEXO to also discuss on the lab. Yeah. So now I have friends. Now I have friends, because a lot of things, because I'm a programmer. I start working as a programmer, and I know that testing is not that easy, and it takes a lot of time, and it becomes a firefighting. You found a bugs, you fix. From the fix of the one bug, it becomes 5 bugs. You fix another 5, and it becomes 10, 20. So let's have a better process, an approach so that it will ease everybody, the government, the policymaker, the lab, the CB, and of course the end user. So that's pretty much on what I want to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shafi. Thank you so much. That was really informative to hear when someone's having to deal with what I'm talking about theoretically and you're having to deal with it in the very real world. Thank you. Any questions at the moment for Shafi before we move on to the panel discussion? Great. Okay. Well, they've really set us up well there for the panel. So, for the panel discussion, I think both Daryl and Shafi have really kind of set the scene here and really set us some challenges as well. On the one hand, Daryl's saying, there's great opportunity here and potentially more collaboration between governments and industry. But on the other hand, Shafi's also mentioned, the kind of national requirements and the need to safeguard at the national level. So how do we find a balance here and find a pragmatic way forward? Now, I have to say, we've been at this point before with conferences like this, and before it's been a bit of a theoretical kind of, wouldn't it be great if, but I kind of sense with the people we've got here that we've got a little bit more of an opportunity to actually move forward. So just want to move those chairs over. I think they're going to be blinded by the light there otherwise. If I could ask the three panelists to join me up here, and let's just have a little question and answer session. So thanks again, all panelists, and perhaps Shafi, I can just turn to you first of all. I'd love the comment around, perfection being the enemy of the good, effectively, and that constant, maybe an older, we need to move over. I'll say, I'll go around this end. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Shafi, as I said, perfection being the enemy of the good and pragmatic kind of thing here as well. But at the same time, there's a balance then between, as I said, the national agenda. So where do you see that potentially? How do you see that needs to shift? And what would be the ideal approach from your side of how you balance that, the national agenda versus the perfectionism, so to speak?
I thought from my experience. So I involved in developing common criteria from 2007 until 2014. Then the management decided to shift from being a technical person in the lab into the certification body. Okay, that's number one. So I have the experience of developing my competency, and we have our accreditation body, AB, of Malaysia come and audited us. So what I can see is instead of having a dedicated team evaluation facility in one country, you can rely on the country AB to do the job. And once they audited the lab, of course, the evaluator, senior evaluator has been audited and they are competent. So have the trust of country of Malaysia because there is a link of AB in Malaysia. We call it a Jabatan Standard Malaysia with the AB in Singapore or any other country for like British. So don't do the same thing. So I don't need to audit Huawei, Setso or DECRA, but I trust their accreditation certificate from their country. So instead of doing everything and you're expecting a perfectionist, I also do not know everything. I just know a little bit. So why not you just have a trust on other agency or parties?
Right. So basically, even if you take perfectionist approach, if you do that to a certain extent, you're taking all the risk. You're thinking, right, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do because I want to be in control. But actually, are you really expert enough to say that? In fact, on that same point, even the accreditation bodies struggle to be sure they have the competencies around areas like this to perform the accreditation. So if they're struggling, then an individual government is obviously going to struggle with that. So that's the key point there. Then is establish trust with your own national accreditation body, right? So it's a good point. And then, Daryl, from your perspective, what can you do as a test lab to help build then the trust and the collaboration with governments? As you were saying, there's an opportunity here if we collaborate. What would you see as the next step to actually making that happen? So from the respective as a test lab, what is it that I presume you have the skills, for instance, some of the skills that Shafi was alluding to. So just wondering what would you like as the next step? Or if it's not what you would do, what do you need from say the government or from other international bodies like us to actually help you achieve this?
I think as a test lab, for us is one way to prove our technical competency is always we have the ISO 17025.
Yeah.
So I believe as to be a lab under ISO 19790, we also need to go through similar accreditation. And I think we need to have a list of people who are able to become technical assessor to evaluate the lab. So that's the thing, because it's very hard to find, because we have experience is we want to get accredit ourselves to that service, but we cannot find locally the technical assessor for that.
Exactly, yeah.
And even that, if we go overseas, we need to know who are, maybe there's the list of people who are able to provide this. Because if you provide that, if we get ourselves accredited with the relevant technical assessor, at least our accreditation can be trusted by the government, by the private certification body, which will also provide consistent in the results that we do for our testing.
Yeah, as I said, that's the one area I've witnessed myself, that accreditation bodies struggling to find suitably competent resource to do that. And maybe that skills is at the heart of some of the problems of why we're struggling to move forward and build that trust. And then, Antonio, you're saying in Spain, it seems then there seems to be a good working relationship between you as a commercial business or a commercial lab there and the government. That seems to be a good model for how it is actually working. So just want to talk through again how you can have a standard global scheme based around 19790, but then for the Spanish government, it seems to be quite straightforward for them to apply their national requirements on top of that. So does that become a good model? Maybe expand on that a bit more, that could be adopted here in ASEAN to allow, again, as Shafi was saying, one product gone through that certification scheme. It's a heck of a lot of time and effort to do it. The more collaboration with the labs to give more volume and scale behind that could help. If we want to just elaborate on how that works in Spain.
Yeah. I mean, this discussion makes a lot of sense, because as Shafi mentioned, I would say the starting point is to be accredited by your national accreditation body, your NAB. This shows that you have the technical competence, and then you have to engage with certification bodies. For the national certification body in Spain, National Certification Cybersecurity Certification Authority, the CCN. It's true that we had a long time relationship with them for common criteria. So adding ISO 19790 to the scope was really straightforward. So the same happened with the Turkish regime, for instance, and adding other certification schemes such as NIST for the for FIPS 140-3. At some point of time, also for the Japanese regime, was a matter of complying with a delta set of requirements. Right. And at the end, this enables us to show our customers that with this, I will say, with this preliminary accreditation, it's possible to reach a wider audience, so to speak, complying with, at some point, again, 4 different certification regimes. And we really hope to continue growing this and recently we added also with BSI, and we are open for further collaborations.
Sure. So just to recap then, so using the 19790 as a kind of a core, you can then just apply the delta that's needed for the different national requirements. So that, as I said, going back to 100 countries have said that's best practice, remains the core of it. But then all you're having to apply is the delta rather than having to recertify. That's the key thing we need to get to here, isn't it? And I think, is there the potential, we might say, across ASEAN, as something we need to explore with maybe discussions, pick it up with CSA here in Singapore. Obviously, we're speaking to cybersecurity, Malaysia, and maybe get Indonesia involved as well. And at least if that's the first circle of trust, maybe in that group here, again, having that common baseline at the heart of it could simplify. Obviously, Shafi, you're doing a great job. It's a very, very tough, as you said, with the skills and expertise required and everything you've had to put in place to manage that process. The more you can benefit and leverage from labs, global CBs such as Acels or DECRA, it then reduces the burden. So we talk about this. What do you think is the reason why it doesn't happen? Is it back to the perfection and the national and they're protecting the national interest? Is that the blocker? Do you think?
Is this session recorded?
It is recorded, okay. So yeah, it is. Unfortunately, I could say no. That's just what you say, but I'll be honest and say it is.
I have to answer.
I totally understand. Yeah.
Sometimes the user do not know what they need.
Yeah.
So when they do not know what they need, so I like your slide saying that the objective. So they cannot specify the objective.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to use your solution, but they cannot list down the objective. Why? What are they trying to meet? They cannot. So okay lah. You just send for evaluation. That's what happened. But if we can discuss and have a 3 to 4 country, and we can come up with a baseline, and then I can always say that okay, looks Malaysia. We already talked to France, UK, Singapore, and they are mentioned in their country also. This is the objective, and it's just 5. It's not extensive until 20. You need to evaluate 20 security function. No, you just need 5. So why not we just can start with 5? So it's not just assessment. It's awareness. Is training and make sure that they understand, because they are the policy maker. So if they understand, then it will easy for us to proceed with the evaluation and certification.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I'm seeing exactly the same issues with AI right now. So with AI, for instance, a lot of the training and the work we're developing is actually around governance and policy, because unless that part is right, everything else that follows is really going to struggle. And I'm seeing everything we're talking about here at a crypto level, I think orders of magnitude more with AI, there's going to be that similar challenge. So it'd be great to get a model that's working here. So it sounds like that awareness and training, the training is really important all the way through to have the right skills at the right level. And maybe there's a certain skill set for governance, policy, objective setting, and another skill set for the auditing and all of that. But maybe it's that top level training and competency around governance where perhaps industry could help. So I think that's a new point here that's not really been picked up on before. Maybe that's a really, really good point to bring forward. And Antonio, in Spain, then, from the kind of competencies of the government, I presume then they've had some long-standing, many years of experience with through common criteria or whatever. They've had that competency there. Is there? I mean, do you provide? I know DECRA provides training in this area. So do you actually do training for senior leaders, or is the training more focused on the technical side of things at the moment?
I mean, actually, we are doing a lot of training activities at different levels, as you can imagine. Maybe some of these activities cannot be called training per se, but some kind of technical introductions of webinars or whatever to make the more global audience aware of what's happening in this domain. And with this activity, we are not only benefiting, we hope, the public, but also it's also collateral benefit for us, because this increases our awareness, and then in some cases both governmental organizations and the private actors are asking for a more I would say in-depth training from our side, and we are closely collaborating with CCN in Spain and also with major vendors to, I would say, to show how requirements are evolving and what's coming next. So it's very important to know what's happening at the moment, but also what's coming in the future, so that certification bodies, government entities know what they have to expect, and also, of course, the manufacturer need to be prepared for what's coming and be able to comply with these new requirements.
Yeah, I think we'll come on to what's coming next, because I think that's going to be a totally separate, a very interesting discussion right at the end here. But going back to what you're saying there, I think this is where I think you and I, DECA and BSI, are very aligned, and there's potential here for us to do something to help get some momentum here in the region. And Daryl, I presume from your perspective, training, informing, engaging with government, you would bring the local perspective to that as well?
Yes, definitely. I think awareness is really very important, like what you mentioned. I think we must know why we need this, what's the assurance that's provided. But at the same time, besides government bodies, we can also go out to the industry, go to IHL, teach them about all this in high level, like different levels, different group, different levels, so that to let them know that all these things are important. And then once we create this, and ultimately for all schemes, if the end user requires it, then the ecosystem will thrive. So, and all these students, they will come into the market. When if they go out to private sector, then they will say that, oh, we need our products to be ISO 19790. And all these will create an ecosystem, and then more motivation for vendors to take part as well in this scheme. Thanks.
Right. So it sounds like the key thing really is to ensure the right level of engagement with the government departments to really get the commitment from that. And it sounds like, well, it's great, Shafi, for you to be sharing with us your experiences, and maybe that we can use that to try and gain some momentum here certainly across the ASEAN region, as well as then looking beyond that and seeing where there have been successes. I know in Japan and Korea, it's very much been a national only, this is our policy for our nation and that's it. And there's not yet been a willingness to collaborate, but maybe if within ASEAN there was enough common interest, I think, across the countries here, this could be really set the standard then for how we could move forward wider in general. And the other thing, I think, going back to the security levels as well, is maybe we could focus on, say, like a level 2 as an initial point, rather than saying we're going to cover everything here. As you mentioned, there's a lot, level 2 or level 3, but if we even just started with level 2, maybe that would be considered as an acceptable start point. But it still comes back to, unless the right people are aware at the right level, what's the benefit to the particular nation's government, then it's going to be very difficult. That, I think, has got to be the key thing we've got to focus on. But I think, Shafi, with your case that you've shared today, hopefully that will help move things forward with potentially with other governments as well. So thanks again for that. Now, we mentioned what's coming next. And I know there's one phrase that's going to, if I said to any of you now, what's the big thing that's coming next in this area that's going to make an impact? The phrase, it starts with Q and ends with ontum, is the thing. So when we come into quantum resistant algorithms, I think that's quite clearly the next big challenge. I mean, it might be quite a few years before quantum becomes that reality, but we can't wait for that. There's technologies that are going to be embedded in devices that need to be protected now from threats in 5 or 10 years. So with this standard, effectively it's algorithm agnostic. It's there to certify the module and the efficacy of the module. But with at least 6 completely different styles, potentially, of quantum-resistant algorithms coming through, what are your thoughts? What's the impact? Anyone who wants to go first on that and dare say something on post-quantum? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that maybe a couple of years ago in the international crypto module certification, maybe there was 1-2 speeches about post-quantum. Now it occupies a full path, a full track of speeches during the conference, because the importance is growing more and more. At the moment, the point is that it's possible to certify compliance implementations of a number of algorithms that are intended for this purpose. I mean, if you take a look, for instance, to the FIPS 100-3 website to list the different implementations, you can see that just a few of them of current implementations support or are certified for these algorithms. So this is something that it's growing, it's coming, but it needs time. I can also mention that recently in DECRA we validated the first entropy source based on quantum techniques. It's for sure it's not the same thing being protected against a post-quantum attack than generating your entropy with quantum techniques, so to speak. But it's just a way to convey the growing importance of the topic, and we expect this to grow even more in the coming years. And well, this is something that we were discussing during lunch. At the end, post-quantum requires, it's complex, requires a lot of resources. So at the end, you need to balance, and I guess that manufacturers are doing this balancing, these considerations before embarking in the implementation of these specific algorithms.
Yeah, I think that's the key point. There is going to be complexity, and that complexity further pushes the need for more collaboration. There's going to be even more pressure on a individual national capability to manage, managing the current situation without having to manage far more complex. The skills they're going to have to get on board, and then looking at the cost as well. So complexity equals cost, straightforward as that. So therefore, if these are going to be more complex, then we've got to look for a more pragmatic, cost-effective way of getting certified, compliant, trusted products on the market, which really pushes again to this model and the need for more trust, as you mentioned, Shafi, between government and industry, be that certification bodies or test labs. But I can still see there's going to be the need to have a capability at the national level, because with the new technology, there needs to be some, but it's going to be impossible, I think, to get that skills to the level that's needed in the time that's needed, and with the pressure to get quantum resistant technologies actually out there in the market. And yeah.
Okay. I start with the word of certification is a big word, meaning that you need to have all those processes, and the processes supported by policy and documentation. So when new thing came in, for example, quantum, so people are talking about certification, but I would rather than say that, hey, let's have a lighter version where we can discuss on the objective, just I mentioned just now. So if you want to certify the company that they are resistant to quantum, so what is the objective? So instead of audit and certification, you just validate and verify. So it's lighter version, and you don't have to develop all those policies, procedures. If you want certification, you need internal audit, management review. No. If I can give you the example, another one is instead of audit you according to ISO 27001, I just go and verify how many control 27002 that you have. And instead of giving a certificate, I give a report saying that you comply. 27002 have 93 control. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Okay. So I can just give you a report. You comply 20 out of 93 control. That's it. So if you ask me on what is my approach, having said but leading the certification body, I believe let's have a mild or fast track. You can say fast track, a lighter version of validate and verification. Thank you.
Yeah, because certification, for it to be valid, has to be based on a consensus standard. And how can you have a standard on something that's still emerging, still changing? So having that, what we're talking about now is just building a level of trust and having some initial. One thing we can't do is just think, well, we can't do anything because there's no standard. The bad guys won't wait for that. So we've got to be aware of the threat. Therefore, having some way of bringing products in with a certain level of trust under certain situations, then has to be the way forward. Very interesting one to take to a wider forum, that I think, actually. Yeah. Any more comments on quantum from anybody?
I just want to add that also providing an example based on how we do things in Spain. In Spain, in the national security regime, there are like 2 levels of qualification for products: medium, well, basic doesn't really count, medium, and high. So my expectation will be that specific post-quantum algorithms will be required for products intended to be qualified inside this high level, so to speak. So for medium level, depending on the use case, they can be maybe not so relevant, but for high assurance, they will probably be required. And then, of course, if we are talking about products that are used by the military, etc., etc.,
exactly, then have their own rules.
Will be
exactly. There are certain national use cases where that won't apply. Exactly, we're just going to push it in there with whatever level of oversight is needed, and maybe that's where it will start, and maybe start to roll out from that into industry. We could talk about the post-quantum stuff all day, but coming back then to the right here and now, just really thinking through what we've said today, I'm kind of going to ask you all to think of if there is one action. I've already got a load here. I think that I'm going to summarize, but if you want to think from your perspectives, one action that you would like to see from this, how we can actually all take this forward, what would that be? I don't know who wants to go first. If everything you said, industry needs to do this, government needs to do that, what's the one thing you would say would be most important to get from today?
I think the word for me is collaboration. More collaboration, more conversation between the certification body, between the labs, between the industry. So I think at least the implementation, adoption of the scheme will be more consistent.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Collaboration, and I think in particular, if we can spread that across the region rather than any one nation here, that would be something really valuable. Thank you, Antonio.
Well, at the end, it's true that I would say the national authorities need to make sure that the products that are deployed in their countries are secure. So it's normal that they take care of this situation while not adding additional burden to the ecosystem. So I will say that the concept that I would like to see, or that I will recommend, is mutual recognition.
Yeah,
having a certificate in one country through a number of I would say of best practices, guidelines, or maybe reducing the scope. I mean, maybe it's not possible to have a mutual recognition for any product, but using I would say a specific security level as a reference, have this mutual recognition, and then build on top
So
of that.
not only level 2, but let's say one particular product type. So it's say for this particular product type, level 2, that would be a start point. Not everything, because you said the number one thing a national authority has to do is protect the nation. So and you know, so what if it costs more or it's a trouble for manufacturers? We've got to protect our country. So that stays there. But up to a point, there's going to be, okay, but what are some easy wins? So maybe we look at not just saying everything at level 2, but certain product types at a certain security level as a start point. So collaboration, mutual recognition with some kind of narrower scope as a start point. Very good. And Shafi,
probably with this, just by having this initial approach, you have covered maybe more than 50% of cases.
Absolutely. So finding where the sweet spot is to get the maximum benefit from it. Exactly.
My words that I choose is mandatory. So basically, when I say mandatory is the first requirement is the product must be certified. That's the first. But we must have if else. If it's not certified, then what? For example, just now I mentioned it must verify or validated. If they don't have what? If they don't have what? So at least you have several layers, but the main is mandatory. So that is my take. If you are not starting, if you do not start with mandatory, then the certification would not be.
So basically a clear, defined mandate.
Yes.
This has to be done. Yes, some flexibility within that.
Correct.
But this has to be done.
Correct.
So collaboration, some mutual recognition, and then being firm on this is the policy, but having some flexibility within that.
Yes.
Well, great. I think of all the sessions we've had so far, this one I think has really brought it to life and got some potential concrete actions here for us to take forward. So thanks very much. Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Yeah.
So first of all, very informative introduction and the panel discussion. So allow me to have two questions. And the first one goes to Shafir. So let's move going back to the year 2013, when your department was defining your own cryptographic module scheme in your country, because at that time there was an existing one in the world. But what would be the motivation for your department to think about build up your own scheme instead of using the existing one? And what would be the reason for your department to using the ISO 19790 as the evaluation standard instead of the other ones? I'm sure there must be a lot of reasons. Could you elaborate a little bit to us?
I got your second question. The first question is?
The first question is because everybody knows in the year 2013 there was in the graphic module industry there was already a scheme.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. Yeah. But why you didn't use or didn't follow, just simply follow the existing scheme instead of build up your own scheme?
Okay. All right. Okay. The first one, I really wish that we are not recording the things. So the other country that adopt as CMVP, if I'm not mistaken, is Japan and Korean. FIPS 140. That's number one question to answer. So number two is I forget.
The standard.
Yeah.
When
okay. Yeah. Okay. Number two is more on national. So in Malaysia, we have, because we are a small country. So if you go for certification of 140-2, everything must be submitted to NIST, right? So we are the small country and we have a product developer. So they have a mindset of, they found a good idea, they develop it into a software. But if US got to know, they can develop easily and you lost your business. So that's number two. So we as a government have the intention to how you say to to ensure that the company can grow. So that's why we choose to have two scheme. If you think that you are really want the certification and sell outside, so FIPS 140 is the way to go. And by all means. But if you think that this is a starting point, you just want a Malaysia market, and that's the first step. So second step, after 2 or 3 years, then you find you already have contact in Singapore or in UK, then you might go for the second certification with 140-2. So we have a lot of SME, small, medium enterprise in Malaysia, and that's what our focus in. Basically, small, medium in Malaysia, we define as a below than 50 staff. So we want them to be pioneer and entrepreneur. So that's where, instead of having an international, just to share, having an international scheme means that Malaysia have the competence, but we also have a local scheme, I would say a local scheme, My CV, to spurs our SME. Okay, thank you. Any other question?
Thank you. And the second question goes quickly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the first one. Thank you, Sheffield. Second one. By the way, second one might also goes to you, David, and to all gentlemen here. Luckily, we have evaluation laboratories here and also certification bodies here. So my question is about technical alignment. How could we make sure the technical judgment and understanding is aligned between the evaluation lab and the certification body? For example, just now Antonio and David, both you introduced about the boundary. But how could you give a confidence to us that your understanding of boundary is equal? But boundary is just an example. Am I clear? The question. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll take that one first. I mean, there are two aspects to that. Firstly, you have the whole of the accreditation process, and the fact that there are standards, not just the requirement standard, but there's also the test standard that sits below that to help bring a level of consistency. Then also the fact that with this standard in particular, it's all unequivocal statements in terms of proving positives, but inevitably there will be areas like the boundary, this kind of thing then as well. So from our perspective on that, we actively engage with our clients maybe ahead of testing even started to make sure then from the outset that we're all understood. It's just about communication and collaboration. So with any complex, high value certification scheme that we work with at all, yes, there may be a test lab, either ours or a third-party test lab that is involved with this, but we engage with the client. The client ultimately wants to be certified. They want the certificate. The test is a route to that. So we engage with the client early on and engage with the test lab early on, and just that communication. What you've said there is so important, and that communication between industry across the test lab and the certification body, you know, it's a standard part of that, have to do that, and certainly something we really focus on. I don't know, Antonio, from your perspective, I presume it's the same applies.
Yeah. At the end, this is a bi-directional thing, so to speak. As you said, David, this is basically based on the accreditations on both the certification body and the laboratory side. And from a laboratory perspective, I can say that defining the boundary, most cases, is not a big issue. This normally problems may arise when this is a complex type of product, or when situation like the one that I mentioned before happens, when the manufacturer would like to apply to a certain security level, but they don't fully comply with it. So what's the way to show compliance? When you can downgrade your application, so to speak, but you can also try to redefine the boundary and say, okay, let's keep or let's stay with SL3, but I remove components or I remove items from my boundary, so that what remains inside the boundary complies with the requirements of my level. For those cases, these are special cases, and we like to contact the certification body or bodies in this regard and know their opinion about the strategy that we are proposing, because otherwise will be a little bit risky.
So definitely that collaboration and communication on such complex schemes is absolutely critical. Hopefully that's answered your question. There was another question. Yes.
Thank you, David. According to the material this afternoon, we found that there are several schemes in Asia. For example, Malaysia, MyCV, and Korea and Japanese. And we know this afternoon, this event is sponsored by BSI. BSI also want to build an international system for the cryptographic module certification based on the international standard. So my question is, how do you think does BSI, how to cooperate with the several schemes to make the high proficiency, high efficiency for the vendors? Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, for that. Yeah, that's a difficult, very, very difficult question. This is really about the awareness point I think we were talking about here, for the individual nations to realize the benefit. And the key to this is combining a common core based around this international best practice, but being clear how the national requirements can be overlaid. And I think, again, we're being recorded here, so I've got to be careful what I say. I think there are some nations and some schemes that don't necessarily see the benefit to them in doing that. You know, the system is working. I think the way ahead is to find a group of nations that can see the benefit and are willing to work together as a start point and actually build that community and build out from there. And there are others in other really fast, high-tech developing areas around the world that are also potentially more willing. So, you know, for me, it's like proving the principle. And if we could prove it here in ASEAN and potentially look at certain areas in Latin America and certain areas of the Middle East and just find where there are countries who want to move forward quickly and see the benefit in that collaboration, would be the way to prove that and build the community out from that. So for me, what I've seen through the last couple of years here in ASEAN, from Indonesia previously, Malaysia, and from Singapore as well, is much more willingness here. So if we can develop the model here and then prove it, then it will become much easier to convince that wider market. And as Antonio mentioned, you know, countries, it's already happening to a certain extent across Spain and Turkey. And so what we can do here is start another core cluster potentially here, where industry and government can work together and actually prove this. And this is absolutely the key point. I don't want to push that almost too much, because I'd much rather engage in the follow-on dialogue directly with Shafi and your counterparts in Indonesia and Singapore, and actually just do this and see what we can to make it happen. And for me, that's the next key step. Hopefully that answers your question. No, thank you. Any more questions? Any more? Oh, there's one online. Yes. Yes. So we got one here around back to post-quantum again. And obviously a huge opportunity, a challenge, lack of tester competency, and also the derived test requirements. That's going to be the key issue here. And I think, Shafi, this comes back to your point. Just like I'm seeing right now with AI, the kind of sandbox model where you've got areas where you can have things tried in a trusted environment and start to build that experience and that knowledge in order to start to build some level of trust in that competency, will be the way ahead. So first steps then, I think, would you say around that competency part? I presume then, is there certainly within the UK, for instance, there's a core competency around quantum and post-quantum that is generic. It's not there to prove any one thing, just to develop competencies. Is that what you're seeing would be the next step along the line here?
Yeah. In Malaysia, the post-quantum initiative was driven by NGO, consists of a lot of experts from universities.
Yeah.
Instead of carrying their university's name and propose to government Malaysia on post-quantum, they decided to make it as an NGO. And from the NGO, consists of a lot of professors, PhDs in quantum, put on paper to say the direction of post-quantum in Malaysia. I'm not involved directly, so I cannot answer what's their proposed, but I can share later on with the Secretariat on what Malaysia are trying to do for the next 3 years to 5 years.
Yeah, thank you. And very, very similar in the UK as well. So a good question, and I think that that government's initiatives around developing competencies is going to be a key start point. Okay, so we've got another question here around resources, going back to 1990 in general. I'll share another link to our website again shortly, which there's a couple of white papers finding more information on there. Training as well. I know Antonio Decra provides some training on this particular area right now, but I'll show the link to our website, which has a load of freely available resource to download on there right now as next steps. So the next step again is what are the actual key requirements. So again, on our website there, we've got a white paper that talks then about gives the brief overview of the requirements. There's basically our scheme document that then details the broad requirements and everything are there on the website as well. And the security levels, we've discussed that one. How do we assure our crypto module remains compliant after certification? So that one I touched on again, and this is a really important part of what I feel we're bringing to this, which is a much more straightforward and a fast path for maintaining that certification, because the version will not stay the same throughout the course of that certificate. And effectively, there are 3 types of change. A change which is mainly administrative, doesn't affect the security module whatsoever, and that just becomes then a review of the documentation to confirm, and then just an update of the version on the certificate. Then there may be something that there is some kind of change there, not necessarily at the heart of the security function, but can get away with a partial retest. And then finally, if there is something that obviously affects the fundamental operation of the security of the module, that's the key point, the security of the module, then a full retest is required. But again, this is where that faster timescale makes a big difference. So hopefully that's answered. Was that the last one? Question. Any more questions from the floor? Okay, well, in that case, a big round of applause for our speakers. Thank you very much. Please go back. And I will just summarize. If you want to go take a seat again, thank you. So, next steps on. As I mentioned, we're developing another white paper. It will actually build on the previous 2 that we've released, and we'll take input from this year's events. In fact, I'll be taking some input directly from the conversations we've had today. So in the next paper, we'll be reviewing again the current crypto module regulatory landscape, including some of what you've heard today, some upcoming cyber regulation that also potentially impacts on this area, and then particularly picking up on this discussion about moving forward with this common approach. And then also looking to that future horizon as well, looking at the impact of integrated and common test tools, and also, as you've heard, post-quantum algorithms. So to find out more, there's a QR code will take you to the website, and there's a load of freely available information to download on that link. Applicable to manufacturers, whether you're a system integrator or an end user specifier, there'll be some useful documentation, the white papers, and an outline of our scheme. So finally then, to summarize today, a couple of things we've talked about today, you've heard before. Decra have presented on testing and the scheme before, but never in such, I think, clarity and completeness as Antonio presented today. We then had some challenges from Daryl, basically saying there's so much more that industry and governments could be doing to advance things in this area. Then, yes, back to me again, talking about the scheme. I've mentioned that before, but really this time emphasizing the benefits here. The fact is this standard represents best practice, and it should be the only way in which trust in the security of cryptographic modules is assessed. And then looking at that speed to actually get the products to market as well. And then finally, a great presentation from Shafi showing what it's really like and his experience here of actually managing a scheme for Malaysia. And yes, some great success, but also how difficult it is, you know, and therefore really emphasizing the need, I think, for more collaboration between government and industry to enable him to deliver that capability for his country. And a fantastic panel discussion as well. So my work's cut out for me now, I think. And then Paul, with your great question there at the end, calling it out, cutting through everything we're talking about today. BSI, what are you going to do about it? So thank you so much for that challenge. And that's the key point I'm going to take away. And as we said, the three really key points here, really collaboration, and collaboration. I could say that 3 times over is the key point here. Mandating it. And Antonio, I've totally forgotten what yours was. Your middle one. You had collaboration, mandate, and don't tell me you've forgotten as well. What was yours? Your last question. It was a brilliant one, and I've totally forgotten. So you had collaboration.
You mean
mutual recognition. Here we go. Mutual recognition. But starting from a controlled space of, let's call it level 2, and maybe narrow down the products as well. So memory's going here. It's been a long day. So collaboration, mutual recognition, and of course, mandate, be flexible with mandate. So on that note, if there are no more questions, I think we're done. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope this has been informative. I'm looking forward to see you at the next one. Oh, well, photo? Yeah, we're going to have a photo for everyone here. And for all those of you online, there'll be a short survey as well. I hope it's been beneficial to everybody. Thank you very much. Goodbye.